Alright, so I've got this old SMC 3/8 valve. I think I've got 9 of them total for my Blazer. I'd gotten off of a friend of mine over near where I live at here. But these need to be gone through, cleaned up real good. So here's a rundown on taking them apart. You've got a little clip on top. Once it's loose, set it to the side. This will come up. You have a little plate on the top. Sometimes it don't come off real easy, but it's just a tag. Then your solenoid will come up. This one's wired in at the bottom. You've got a spring washer. We're just setting all this stuff over to the side. So the next thing, you're taking these 4 screws out. So we'll go ahead and get these screws out. The diaphragm in the center, I'm hoping it's in good shape still. I'm not really all that sure that I can replace them anymore. The last set of these I had was around 14-15 years ago. Here, so the screws are out. Bias up a little bit here. All right. So diaphragm, it's right here. There's an O-ring, and a diaphragm, and a spring. Other than just being dirty, I think the diaphragm's good, so that's a plus. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna try and polish this brass up a little bit. Clean both these up here. I'll be back. All right, so this little piston came out of the inside of, came out of the inside of that top half of the valve. It slid up in here. So this will thread off. Get a O-ring down in there. So we'll get that O-ring out, make sure it's still good, and try and get all this cleaned up. We'll back to the video after I get a little more of this cleaned up. We're using we're dropping everything. Using white diamond heavy metal or metal polish. Normally I use chemical, guys, but I can't find it. I've been going through a bunch of stuff in the garage here and I've misplaced it. So this should work just fine. It's getting a good shine on it, and probably use some WD-40 and some air lube. Try and get that cleaned out on the inside. Okay, so I've cleaned this the best that I'm going to. There's still some a little bit leftover from the rust, all the metals that have been cut around it. It's set over years, but the O-ring's back in place in both these positions, here and down in here. So Here's the stem that went on top of that. I did pull this spring out and just kind of stretch it just a little bit. So this thread down into here. Probably work better if I tried to keep that down in it. Okay, so the little piston is inside the stem, is threaded in. I haven't tightened anything up. You have the O-ring sitting in place in the base. The gasket, I did oil everything up with the Marvel tool. I think I said chain oil in the first part of this video, but it's air tool is what I'm using. I did use some WD-40 trying to break loose some of the debris, but gasket on top of the O-ring, spring on top of the gasket. And then once that's in place, the screws. You don't want to tighten these down super tight. Just kind of want to make sure they get a good seal. Make sure your lock washers are in place. Good snug. On each of the screws. Okay. Now you've got next piece. You're making sure this is actually tightened down. So we should have a good connection on it, or good and tight anyway. Don't want to go too tight, it's brass, but want to make sure you're sealed up. And you got the little spring washer. solenoid. Your data tag. Alright, so you gotta push down a little bit to get that to go into its spot. I'll wipe everything off. I got a whole lot of oil on it. Alright, so I mean, it's not perfect, but it's cleaned up, and this is pretty well what we started with. So I tried to use some Kaboom. That didn't really do much for me on it. The best for trying to clean up the brass itself was this stuff. Little cheap Dremel with a polishing pad on it. That was mainly just to try and clean up some of the old tarnish that was on it. Really, the main point was just getting in, checking the O-rings and that gasket. Gasket didn't seem like any issues. I used this Marvel air tool, cleaned all the O-rings, cleaned the gasket with it, and put it all back together. That's it.